Hello, I'm Lucas. This is Strike the Sun MD, and I'd like to talk about a history book in the Penguin History of Europe series. I believe it's the fifth one in the series. It is Christendom Destroyed, Europe 1517 to 1648. It's a broad, sweeping history by Mark Greengrass, and I have to say that I really enjoy it. I don't know how it holds up in terms of it being the best thing to learn from about this time period, but I have to hold this up higher than I would normally. But I'd have to say that for me personally, I love Penguin. I think they make a lot of great books. I have not really read that much history, especially about Europe. I've read my fair share about the Revolutionary War in America, given that that's sort of our creation myth, as my friend puts it. But I have sort of tangential information, knowledge from different areas, but I've never really studied or read about Europe at this time, or showed much interest. But my girlfriend bought this for me for Christmas, and I'm very happy that she did. I have started reading a lot more nonfiction, a lot more history and biography the past few years, and it has been a treasure trove of knowledge, and that's how I feel about this book. I think it has its flaws, but let me talk about the things that I really appreciate about it. First and foremost, it is a broad, sweeping history, as I've said. It's almost 700 pages of a vast knowledge of different ways that religion affected the culture of Europe at this time, and how Europe's religion and the sort of belligerent states of Europe were mirrored in the New World, for example, especially with Spain and the colonizing powers, with the Dutch and the English and the French and the Spanish. It really gives a surface level, I suppose, a surface level look into how they justified a lot of their actions, and despite the sort of, it's hard to say it's inhumane given that humans did that, colonized and enslaved people in the name of God, but it really goes to show how religion has been used as a tool, not just to further economic purposes, but also to further other tools such as war. And it really is like disturbingly comforting to know that the more things change, the more they stay the same. If you just read the news, you will see, and if you talk to anybody that is excited about what they read in the news, especially when it relates to my country, America, it's horrifying. And how religion is still used as a tool. I've got some notes over here in case you're wondering what I'm looking at. But yeah, this book, it really brings some kind of disturbing comfort to me, and it brings a lot of different major players throughout this time period. Let's see if I can get this. One of the key players would be this guy here. Can I get it to... There we go. I think that's him, Martin Luther. There's a whole bunch of other figures that are really important too on here. But Martin Luther sort of kicking off the Lutheran Reformation, and really causing a massive schism from Catholicism, with his very strong remarks, to say the least, about the Pope and how he's a scarlet whore and you can just buy your way into heaven with his 95 Theses and his other texts that he wrote. It's really fascinating to see that, and to see like just how much chaos that caused in a way. And it does a good job of making sure that you know that he wasn't just coming out of nowhere. There were sort of rumblings, and there's always rumblings of things before they burst. And he just happened to be the one to cause the bubble to explode. And I do appreciate that it regularly does that through different periods, whether it's it makes the biggest point about Martin Luther, but I mean when it talks about Spain or England or the Ottoman Empire even, and Europe's relationship with the Ottoman Empire, it is great. Now I'd like to sort of talk about some of the things that I don't like. One more thing that I do like. There is a point much later in the book that I enjoy because it's in the getting closer to the middle of the 17th century, you know, closer to the end of this time period, 1648, and it really gets into how the media, newspapers, were highly influential in the way it developed the culture, how they could defame different people and change the narrative, so to speak. It's comforting to know that we have always been horribly awful, and every tool that we create, whether it's a religion that is supposed to make you a better person and a more holy person and all that, or, well, we won't even get into war. War is just bad, but or if it's a medium, I suppose, that is made to distribute knowledge so that people can be informed, we regularly pervert it for the worst possible causes. And it's amazing to see how, even at that time, newspapers, not that literacy was high, I believe, but probably there were speakers that would get the newspaper or whatever and talk about it, and then it would just have this sort of echo. People would hear it, and then they would talk about it, and it might get diluted, but, you know, there'd just be this echo back and forth of ideas clashing from all these people talking. And it's amazing, time and time again, how you see the points where sort of knowledge gets dropped, or Martin Luther's schism sort of breaks out, and it affects the literati, and it affects the kings and the peasants and everyone. I really appreciate that. It does a good job of showing, I believe, 131 years, right? Am I wrong? Of just suffering and the worst things that people do. And have done, and how they have these problems that they see, and the creative solutions that they come up with to solve their problem, which ends up inevitably making creative problems, I think, more than creative solutions, because the creative problems need more creative solutions, which create more creative problems, and it's just an endless cycle, which is why the more things change, the more they stay the same, I suppose. But what I don't like about the book is that in the first half or third or so, it really gets into the nitty-gritty of each aspect of people's everyday life or culture or whatever, and how important the church was, and how important religion was, and how it influenced everything. And that's really great, and I really enjoyed that. But then it becomes all about the conflicts, and I mean there's other facts interspersed throughout about colonization, or what have you, but largely it's like battle after battle after conflict after conflict after conflict, and it all sort of becomes a blur at that point. And because of that, though it is 700 pages, it has this blurring effect that, you just get slammed again and again with all these facts and figures, and it's hard to keep track. And I read it slower than I normally read books because it was so dense with information, but it was still difficult to keep up in a way. So there's that. And that's my main gripe with it. There are times where you're left wanting more, which is sort of a good thing too, where it talks about Philip II or Queen Elizabeth or the Austrian Habsburgs or French Habsburgs or Spain in general or Martin Luther, or Adolf Gustav, the Swedish guy. And you sort of want to know more about them because you find, like, okay, like, what you've presented to me is really fascinating. I want to know more about this guy. Next chapter or next section. But that's what happens when you have a book that covers 131 years. You can't really focus on any one thing. You might be able to see that I have sort of bent a lot of pages, dog-eared them, so that I can come back to this. Oh, hello. I can come back to this book and find something on one of those pages that I found interesting. Let's just take a look. For example, what can I find on this page? I don't know, but oh gosh. Yeah, this page right here, the gunpowder plot, right at the top. I won't try to show it, but it talks about the gunpowder plot briefly. And it's, oh, I've heard about that, but I don't really, it gives a synopsis of what the whole plot was about, but I'd like to know more. But that's what this book is great for. It is a flaw, but it's like a curse and a blessing. And that's all I've really got to say about it. I enjoyed it. I'm going to pick up the other series. I'm sure I'm going to have similar issues with them. Maybe they won't be as dry. I've seen this, I think, is the longest one. But maybe they'll leave me wanting to know more information. But if I get to know more, the way it's going to be presented might be a blur. So, overall, I recommend this book. I really think it's great. And thank you. Goodbye.